All right, what is up, everybody? We are back for another episode of our weekly Wednesday live Q&A, and as always, we have a great topic this evening. And the topic of the week is show day. And what I wanted to cover and what a lot of you guys asked for were basically tips, tricks, advice to navigating through show day, and hoping that all the effort that you put in the contest prep comes out the way that you want it to. So I see everybody is tuning in here live on Facebook. Matt, I see ya. And I'm also recording, as always, for my SoundCloud, and this will be also on my YouTube account. All that will probably be up tomorrow for SoundCloud, maybe tonight. So let's get going, guys. You guys know the drill by now. I put up a status about 11 o'clock during the day, and I asked you guys to ask me questions about a particular topic. And you guys did not disappoint once again. I do appreciate everybody giving me all these great questions. So we're going to dive right into them. James asked me, in my opinion, how should nutrition be on show day? Like, what is the best approach to stay sharp between prejudging and finals? So James starting us off with a great one. And my advice always has been to make sure, obviously, that you look your absolute best going into the show, so no matter what. But James is looking at his nutrition leading us off. So let's say he's already looking great. We're taking that factor out right now, and he wants to stay sharp between the prejudging, which is normally in the morning, and the night show, if those are judged separately. So what I always recommend is having fairly small meals when you are going from prejudging to the night show. And by small meals, this is going to vary depending on the person. But for a lot of my clients, like let's say it's going to be like 20 to 30 grams of protein. Depending on the carbs are going to probably differ the most. They could be anywhere from 20 maybe to 50 grams of carbs, even 60 grams of carbs per meal. And then fat's going to be somewhere around let's say 6 to 10 grams per meal. So they're going to be relatively smaller meals, something easy, digestible. They're going to be anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours in between. And that way you keep that look going from the morning. Now, what a lot of people might say is that, or they think that as soon as you get off the stage for prejudging, then you can just eat whatever the hell you want. Well, that's actually how some people lose at the night show, especially if they're going for an overall, is they may look great in the morning, but then when they're up against all the other people, if they went out for a hamburger and french fries, something that's not really trackable, that's when things just go haywire. So I would say stick to foods that you have been eating, and then eat them according to how big or how good you handle carbs. Eat them about every hour to hour and a half. Bronwyn leading off the topic again here. She's always asking very solid questions. She said, what are some must-haves in your bag? And this is a great question, especially really just for anybody, but for people in general who are competing. So I'll just say I won't necessarily narrow down a specific category, but I'll give just kind of helpful advice for everybody. And I will first say that I do send, especially for my bikini competitors, I do send out a detailed list of everything that they should bring to the show. Just kind of makes life easier, especially for first-time competitors. We could tend to forget. So, what is in my bag of tricks on show day? Do not forget this item. If you forget this item, you will be screwed. And that is your suit. You cannot forget your posing suit. Double check, triple check if you have your suit, because that is the most important thing that you need on show day besides yourself. So make sure you got your suit. Obviously, we want to make sure that we have plenty of extra food depending on how the show is going to lay out. Some of these shows, and they can last a very, very long time. So if we're saying that we're going to eat every hour, hour and a half, we might have to eat more because the show's dragging on. Some of these shows move quick. Other of these shows, they take forever. They go into the night. So make sure we got plenty of food. Have a comfy chair. Take backstage. There's not great seating backstage. A lot of people end up just laying on the ground. So I would say definitely take a chair. Have some warm clothes. Obviously, when we're dieted down, we have very low body fat. We're not going to be particularly warm. These shows, it's great to compete over the summer, but even during the summer, our body fat is so low that we're cold when it's 90 degrees outside. So I would say definitely wear warm clothes. I've seen some people that wear, like, I would really recommend this, is just keeping your feet covered at all times. Have some wool socks. Always make sure you're wearing sandals or shoes or slippers or whatever, just because if your feet get cold, the rest of your body gets cold, and then you have a hard time like catching a pump. Obviously, if you are taking, Matt says, take a sewing kit. That's great advice, Matt. I did not think of that one. If you're going to take a sewing kit, if God forbid something were to snap, if you need, bring extra bobby pins, something to make it hold, some safety clips. That is another great addition as well. Besides that, make sure that if you're taking your own tan, for me, like, I use Dream Tan. A lot of my bodybuilders use Dream Tan. Bikini girls are going to get your spray. We'll just keep the show rolling here. All right. Yeah, a lot of people are saying bring an extra suit. That's always a good idea. I usually have 2 suits on me as well. Karen said scissors and tape. And yeah, you could cut your number smaller. That's always a good idea. I always bring extra clothes. And for everybody who uses Dream Tan, this is another pro tip of the week for those of you who have been seeing my pro tips on Instagram, is any tan, particularly Dream Tan that's oil-based, comes off. It doesn't come off easy. There's a couple things that make it come off easy. One of them is baby oil, and one of them is Dawn dish soap. So actually, when I competed last, I made the mistake of trying to take my tan off with soap and water, and it took forever. And I ended up rubbing more of my skin off than anything. At my very last competition, I was a little bit more experienced. I actually brought a bottle of baby oil, stepped outside into the grass, poured it all over me, rubbed it off, had a really crappy towel, and I was ghost white like I currently am within a matter of minutes. So something to take off your tan, particularly the bodybuilders or anybody else who is using Dream Tan. Other than that, those are kind of the big things that always jump out at me, and we had some great other additions to this one as well. But Bronwyn, I will be sending you the very detailed list. Sometimes people bring one other one that came to mind was a mirror. Sometimes you do have to fight for mirrors. I've personally actually brought weights to a show. Obviously, like, resistance bands are always a good thing that aren't very heavy that you could bring. So I would say always throw in some kind of resistance bands. But those are the major players here, and Brown and I will send you your list. Now, Kenton, he did ask some great questions here. Kenton is, of course, CMO, and just all-around good guy. And I appreciate him asking some questions. But he said, how much can we generalize show day nutrition, both in terms of macronutrient composition and timing? Are there certain principles, X carbs to Y protein, that hold steady for use in all cases, or are these factors particular to the athlete? So Ken, that is definitely going to be particular to the athlete, but I would say a general principle that would hold steady throughout everybody is that generally it's going to be more carbs than protein, if anything. Like on show day for me before, I ate like almost, not necessarily trace protein, but I had let's say 10 to 20 grams of protein per meal. And right now, I'm eating like 40. So that's something that's going to change from person to person, is definitely the ratio, but definitely higher carbs, especially for like a larger bodybuilder. That's going to play a lot major role. You're going to want to have a lot more carbs than protein, and that's going to hold for everybody pretty much. So obviously, it is a case-by-case basis, but as a general rule of thumb, definitely more carbs than protein, and honestly, keep fats a little bit lower. And I know you didn't ask this, but I feel like it's very relevant to this question, is I like to have easier digestible foods on show day. One, to basically keep bloating down, just in case you don't want to be eating something that's super high in fiber. And two, we just want to make sure that we're processing everything. We don't need anything getting backed up in us. So Kent and I know that wasn't quite your question, but it's relevant for this one. Now, Julie said, are there any suggestions how to cancel nerves? She says that they're inevitable, into a positive energy for the stage. Tips on how to reduce nerves and remain calm and focused. So this is Julie, a very seasoned competitor, asking me this question. And I did think about this question all day because I did see Julie's question earlier. And the answer is you can't really prepare for the stage. That's something it's tough for anybody. It's tough for me. And I find that the more experience that you have, so let's say like when I first started competing years ago, I was very, very nervous when I was backstage. I didn't talk to anybody. I just kind of kept to myself. What's changed over the years for me, and this is me personally, when I go to a show, they're almost like family reunions. And some of these people I literally don't see for years at a time, so it's kind of nice to be able to catch up with them. Yes, we are there to compete against each other. Yes, we are there, at least for the pros, to try to win some money, from my point of view. But what I found that helps relax me the most is talking to the people backstage and just kind of making new friends, or at least hanging out with some old friends. That helps calm my nerves because it takes my mind away from what I'm trying to do. Obviously, let's say I'm BSing for a couple hours before the show, and then they're like, all right, pro bodybuilders are going to be up in 30 minutes. Well, then it's time, to kind of push everybody to the side and let's say that's when I'm going in my zone. And then Karen did say, and she did include it, and I wanted to get to this, and what a lot of people do is they might drink wine to help with the nerves. And I'll be honest, guys, you should absolutely never drink wine before you go to the stage, and here's why. And if your coach tells you to drink wine because it's going to bring your vascularity out, although that statement is true, having a candy bar will do the same thing. It's just going to, boost your, the blood sugar levels, in your system, and it's going to make you more vascular. But it's also going to make you a little loopy, especially for someone that's at a low body fat percentage that hasn't really been eating that much. You probably hasn't been drinking that much over their contest prep. It is not a good idea. I've literally seen girls drink a couple glasses of wine backstage, and they are wobbly as hell on stage. And it's a poor representation in all honesty. So do not drink wine to calm the nerves. Matt even said, and he agreed with me, he said, try to be more social when you're backstage. And honestly, I feel like you being around other competitors who are going through the same thing will help you calm down a little bit. And I will close the question with this one. And I guess there was kind of a follow-up. But if you're not a little bit nervous, that's probably a bad sign. I still get nervous right before I step on stage. If you are going to a competition, and this year, obviously, you guys know I'm competing, and if I'm going to step on stage, right beforehand, I'm going to be getting in the zone. I'm going to be a little bit nervous, but when I get out there, it's going to be business as usual. There's nothing else that's going to affect me when I'm out there. I just have to get my mind right, and conduct business. And let's see here. Krista asked, can we also talk about the nerves leading up to the big day? So yes, let's talk about that really quick. Leading up to the big day, we know that these shows don't typically are too close to where we live, so sometimes there is a decent amount of travel involved. And with a decent amount of travel comes the stress of having to go to a hotel, potentially having to drive a few hours. So what I would say, and this is what I'm personally going to do this year, whether you guys can fit it into your schedule or not, I'm actually going to go, because I have to travel literally across the country to compete in pro shows, I'm going to go a day earlier than usual. So usually I roll in on Friday. This year, I'm actually going to have my travel day be on Thursday. I'm going to chill all day Friday, do the rest of my carving up, relax, and then on Saturday, I'm going to compete. So that's my new strategy leading into this year. And I know that not everybody has the flexible schedule like I do to do that. But if you can get away with it, make your travel day Thursday, relax on Friday at the hotel. It's only one extra day out of the week, so that is definitely a good one. And Karen just said it, and I was going to get to it in a second. But that's definitely going to help with water retention. So let's say you're going to be seated in a car for 14 hours or something crazy, or on a plane for 4 hours and not being able to move. That can have a negative impact on your physique. So you want to do everything in your power to do that as well. So even guys, and I feel like I'm giving out my secrets of the year, but you guys are good enough to tune in, so I'll tell you. I have to travel about 7 to 8 hours for two of my shows this year. I'm going to be driving to them. I'm not flying to them. And my new strategy with driving is we're going to drive for about 2 hours, and then I'm going to get out of the car and I'm going to walk for like 10 minutes or so just to get the blood flowing, to try to prevent any extra water retention, in my legs, just to keep everything going. I'll probably be pounding water that whole time just to make sure, that I'm not going to hold on to any more. So there is, once again, one of my secrets of the year that I'm going to be implementing. Karen asked, navigating through show day with a box of pizza, Skittles, Reese's peanut butter cuts, honey, Snickers, like you see most athletes consuming backstage. So Karen, although that is not necessarily a question, I know what you're getting at, and I think, all right, so we'll time's out there, and we'll talk about things not to do, and I think there was another one that's the biggest mistake. So let's go to the biggest mistakes question. And Karen nailed it. And there is always a ton of junk food at these shows backstage because, this is somebody's first and last competition or their last competition of the year, and they're going to go ham on food backstage. And like for me, let's say, I'm going to be doing 3, 4, 5 competitions this year, and I can't physically eat a bunch of junk food right after any of my shows. So, you definitely have to stay away from that. And as far as like carbing up goes, if you're not carbed up by the morning, like there's really nothing you're going to be able to do, nothing you're going to be able to eat to really get those carbs in. So yeah, I've seen people, eating bags of Snickers and Reese's peanut butter cups thinking that it's going to help them carb up. And sure, they might have a slight effect on our vascularity, getting the blood sugar into the system. But if you're carbing up like an hour before you go on stage, that's just not going to work. It's not going to be enough time for those carbs to be digested, turned into glucose, and shuttled intramuscularly. So that would probably be like the biggest mistake not to do on show day. Bronwyn said, what is show day like between competitor and coach? What to expect for that day? Also, how much eating is there the day of? So Bronwyn, I covered the eating one earlier in the video. As far as competitor and coach, for me, it's a very long day for both of us. So obviously, you guys probably know Bronwyn by now. She works with me. Whether I'm going to be at her competition or not, we'll see. But regardless, the day starts early. We start with very early check-ins, sometimes 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, depending on when prejudging starts, depending on when they're going to go on. And then it is a constant back and forth via text, via phone calls. There's a lot of pictures. Hopefully we find some good lighting for those pictures. I will say that is probably the most beneficial thing from my standpoint, is just getting quality pictures so I can evaluate with clients. Like I said, it is a lot of back and forth, but then it's also a lot of waiting. I remember waiting up for hours and hours and hours because sometimes I don't hear from my clients because the show's getting delayed, because they're in a location where they don't have good cell phone service. And I'm literally waiting up, so I'm up at 3, 4 in the morning, and then sometimes I'm up until, 11 or midnight that night. And it could be almost like a 24-hour day with you being up. But there's always a lot of back and forth. At least a good coach should be, in contact with you at all times. So that's kind of how show day works between a coach and a client. All right. Holly asked, what's the worst thing to eat before going on stage? I don't know if there's a particular worst thing to eat, but if you're slamming food, 30 minutes to an hour before you step on stage, that's probably not necessarily the best thing to do. And and one other question was, and I'll actually get to it in Lydia's question in regards to eating out like on or before show day. So let me get to that one just a little bit later. It'll make a little bit more sense. Jeff asked, what's the biggest, most common mistake you see most competitors make on show day? Jeff, I definitely think that, like a big one for me, and I just find it more comical than anything, is as soon as the competitor meeting is over, and it's mostly bodybuilders, mostly like first-time bodybuilders, they will immediately peel off their clothes, and they'll be in their trunks for hours, and they're pumping up for hours, and they're staring everybody down for hours, and it's always the guys who are like competing first or think they're really tough, and they end up being like the big overweight ones who, I don't know, I don't know. If it's a stereotype, I'm sorry, but I've seen it a lot. So, I mean, that's a big mistake is like pumping up just for hours at a time. Not relaxing. That's another huge mistake. And then the last one, that I would say is, either not drinking water, that one, or carbing up at the last second. I would say all those kind of contributing factors are all very, very common mistakes and big mistakes on show day itself. Excluding just atrocious posing, that's got to be the worst thing that you could do is work hard and then pose like shit. It's Karen just making me laugh. All right. Michelle said, yeah, we're just gonna skip that one. Lydia said, how to best take care for show day tan, avoid sitting marks on the back of your legs. Early day mornings. Okay, so she's just talking about like show day protocol for tanning, and I see Lydia's right here just in time. So for those of you who get spray tanned, I have not personally been spray tanned. I've only used Dream Tan when I've competed, at least in most recent years. So for those of you who get spray tanned, I know that show day can be rushed, but I also know that you usually get like a base coat the day before. What I could recommend, so let's say we are getting sprayed the day before. Right after that, we want to make sure it properly dries. Sometimes the people that are doing the spray tan have fans to help the drying process. If they don't have fans, you literally just have to stand around and wait for your tan to dry. So 1, wait for your tan to dry. 2, once that tan is dried, we want to make sure that we wear long sleeves, long pants, socks, and not a 3/4 sleeve shirt like I'm wearing right now. We want to make sure that we're completely covered. Just because if you are staying at a hotel, they will charge you if you ruin their sheets. But we also don't want our tan rubbing off, so it's a twofer. We want to keep our tan on, and we don't want people to charge us for sheets. So that's another way to help keep the tan on and us looking fresh. And then, of course, on show day, we're going to want to keep our clothes on as long as possible. And usually, if the show is done right, they're going to have people doing touch-up tans right before stage. So we're going to want your competition suit on, and we're going to get you spray tan. And then once you're tanned, once again, we're going to make sure that we are completely dry before we put our clothes back on, which you should not, or before you go to sit down. So those are kind of the things. And then Karen also said, ladies, make sure you put the toilet seat paper down. And then somebody else said that they pack their own sheets. And yeah, I mean that's definitely 2 good ways just to make sure that you're not ruining anything. All right, Lydia, she got a bunch here, and I'm glad that she tuned in right on time. She said, and this was kind of a dig at me, I guess, but this is how my clients treat me in these Q&As. She said, how far will I travel to see my clients compete? Or how close do I need to plan my next competition so you could be there to coach me in person? Lydia, so I do a considerable amount of traveling. I really like to see my clients compete in person, I must say. It just makes the process a lot more enjoyable. I will absolutely do my best to see you compete. Can I guarantee that? No. Obviously, with my schedule and the amount of clients I have, there's some people competing on multiple weekends at the same time, so I can't necessarily go. Plus, you do have to realize, that traveling does come with a cost. I don't just have a private jet that takes me around. I do have to pay my own way, but I will try to be at a lot of my clients' competitions, especially first timers, because it does make them feel more calm. Definitely. I'm located near Chicago, so I'm kind of in the central United States. A lot of my clients don't necessarily live right by me, so there is always a considerable amount of travel for these competitions. Lydia also asked, as a coach, how do I navigate show day for clients, timing, adjusting for food, water intake, sodium? So I feel like this is it's a very valid question, first to start off. But really, on show day itself, I don't manipulate all that much. And that might sound crazy to some people, but I'll tell you why. It's because by the time show day rolls around, I already know what's going to happen because I've executed other trial carb ups before, and I've already been manipulating their sodium and been manipulating their water. So really on show day, it just comes down to executing the plan. On show day itself, I've really never had to make that great of changes just because I take the time to learn people's bodies and how they respond to the water, the sodium, and of course their food intake. So on show day itself, it's just more or less just reassuring the people how we're looking. And as I talked about with Bronwyn's comment a little bit earlier, coach client, there's just a lot of back and forth, a lot of pictures. And just a lot of reassurance, that everything is going to come out and our hard work is going to pay off. Then Drew hit me hard with this one. He said, please reiterate the phrase, no voodoo, which I actually did not hear of before. But he's basically getting at, if you aren't ready at 2 weeks out, pick another show. Don't rely on last minute gimmicks to think that a diuretic is going to save you if you aren't in shape. So yes, Drew is absolutely right, and then Karen and Matt were kind of cutting a few jokes in back and forth under his comment, but Drew hit it, nail on the head. If you're not ready on show day, if you're not ready, basically peak week, and you think that these gimmicks are gonna, make you just peak to your max or just develop your physique to a whole new level, you're definitely mistaken. So yeah, make sure you're definitely ready before show day. But that's not necessarily, that's more of a peak week topic. But I am glad that Drew did bring that up. So yes, that is very relevant. Lydia also asked, any thoughts on competition day social media usage? Man, and that's why I love my clients, because they ask the best questions. And I've never been asked this question before. And I'll give you guys my honest opinion, and it might hurt some people's feelings, but here we go. So, on show day, you should focus on yourself. Focus on your shit. Like, why are we there? We're not there to take a bunch of pictures and be doing live videos and be updating people every fucking 5 seconds. You're there to compete, and I feel like, at least me, I'm there, like I said, I am there to, socialize a little bit, but with people that I haven't seen. I'm not on my phone all the time. I'll even tell you guys, like, when I go to compete this year, like, I'm sure a lot of you will be sending me messages and, well wishes, but honestly, guys, like, I'm probably not going to be updating you guys every 5 seconds, I don't even know if I'll update you guys after, but I'm there to compete, I'm there to win. I'm not there to play Mr. Social Media. I have my times that I do social media. Obviously, everyone's tuning in Wednesday night. Here I am doing my social media. I'm not going to do a live video from backstage. Like, I'm there to focus. I'm not there to fuck around, if I could use some foul language. And I feel like a lot of people just try to make it like a glamour show or like all about them, and like making sure that everybody knows that they're competing. Everybody knows you're competing. When it comes time for September, everybody knows like when my competition is. Everybody knows what shows I'm doing this year, more or less. And they're going to understand that I will eventually update you. But the people drive me absolutely insane. You don't have that many fans that you need to update them every 5 minutes, that you're sitting around backstage or you're pumping up, you're carbing up. Like, you need to focus especially on first-time competitors. Like, listen, guys, like, you don't have the experience. You can't just be goofing around. Like, you have to execute the plan. I know it's hard, but yeah, I mean, that's the truth. Like, you can't be messing around on Instagram or on Facebook, and yeah, I mean, you could be, updating people every now and then, but like, why are you there? Are you there to play social media? Or are you there to step on stage and to win? And that's me. Obviously, you guys know me. I'm very competitive, and that's how I look at show day. It's time to compete. It's not time to mess around on social media. Rant over. Jeez. Anyway, things to take note of during show day, to utilize for your next show, timing, intake, etc. So yes, that was another question by Lydia. What are we keeping track of? And I'm going to steal a phrase from one of my buddies, Chase. And he said, what gets measured gets managed. I fucked that up, but that's okay. What gets measured gets managed. And by that, I mean, we need to track everything that we intake. I'm not saying that you have to tell me exactly how many ounces of water that you drank that day, but I do need to know how much food you intook. Obviously, I'm the one telling you, so you should be able to stick to that plan. And then we're going to take pictures, a couple times in the morning, mid-afternoon, at night, and evaluate where we looked our best. If we need to make changes, once again, I did say that we should have made our changes prior to, but from show to show, yes, there might be slight changes. So those are the things that we're going to want to utilize, is just a lot of pictures on show day, if anything, throughout different times of the day, so we can see when you look your absolute best. Marcus said, how much water intake is best leading up to a show? And this is like the question of all questions. How much water do you drink? Some people will say, don't drink any water on show day. You'll look extra dry. All right, well, that's all good and well, but our muscles are made up of water. We need water intramuscularly to look big. If we don't have water, we're going to have water inside our muscles regardless, but it's how much. We want to inflate the balloon as much as we can. So we're going to want to make sure that water isn't in our system. So I am a fan of water. Everybody that works with me knows that already. I make all my athletes drink water the whole week leading up to the show. I make my athletes drink water all day on the show just to help process all these carbs and put them where we need to go. Now, on show day, and this is what we're talking about, I do not force the issue with water. The work should have been done in days prior, depending on our carb up method. So I'm not necessarily having my athletes drink a gallon of water before they compete. Like, if we're going to have a couple meals, and this is how I word it, and it causes a little bit of confusion, but it makes sense to me at least, and it's to drink as you are thirsty. So for example, myself, and this is me at my current point, but this is pretty typical. And I have my gallon jug with me, and this is my second jug of the day, but by let's say 10 o'clock, my water intake is maybe a fourth of a gallon. So I should know by show day roughly that, maybe I should drink about a fourth of a gallon of water. I'm not going to force it. I'm not going to stay away from it. If I'm thirsty, I'm going to drink. If I'm not necessarily thirsty, I'm not going to drink. But you're going to be talking a lot. You're probably going to, you're going to be hungry. You're not going to be eating that much food on show day itself. So you're probably going to want to be drinking some water. What thirsty is. All right, and I did see some other questions coming here, guys. We are wrapping up the questions that were posted on the initial feed, and I'll go through the ones that were asked in the video. So that's my take on water, and we're almost done with this video, guys. So if you want to ask any other questions, make sure to get them in before I end it here. Holly also asked, what do I recommend for meal the night before? I've said she's seen coaches eat chicken and rice, spinach, and others burgers and fries, and fat, salt will be good for you. What's your take? So my take on it is the same thing that I said with Lydia. What gets measured gets managed. If you go out for a nasty burger and fries and cheese and all the salt, or a lot of people do like sushi the night before, that's all good and well, but that's very hard to manage. Like if I tell somebody to go eat a pizza, like what kind of pizza? Like is it a California kitchen pizza or is it going to be a deep dish pizza? Those are way two different things. So we're going to want to make sure that we're eating normal foods that we have been in the past, not only for digestive purposes, but also just so we can make sure we're going to process them, but also we're going to be able to manage them. And when somebody competes with me, they have specific numbers that they're going to hit, or sometimes if we're like a bodybuilder who's eating specific foods, and we just don't want to go ham the night before because that could fuck us up. And I know some people swear by it, and it may work for some people, but I find that an extremely risky method of carbing up is just going out and basically having a cheat meal the night before. That's just a very poor way of doing it. And then Lydia asked, the last one is more of kind of a statement and or question. She just said post-competition meal. So as I talked about earlier in the video, a lot of people Some people will only compete once, some people will compete multiple shows, but we have to evaluate where we are in our own competition season. So right now, like my first tentative show is going to be September 15th. I'm not going to go out and splurge on September 15th because I know that I'm going to have other shows coming up. At the end of the year, at my very last show, yes, I will probably go and enjoy a nice postseason meal, definitely, but you have to evaluate where you are. So let's say you do have multiple shows lined up, which I feel like a lot of people do. Yes, you can go have something respectable. Usually I like to recommend something finite, and by finite I mean like a sandwich, or sometimes you could have a hamburger or whatever, and just make it small, make it satisfying. But never will I ever say like, oh yeah, go eat pizza, or just like go to a Chinese buffet and like eat whatever you want. We want to have some control after a show, especially if we are going in to have or if we're going to compete multiple times. And then like to kind of wrap that up is you do have to get right back in your diet the next day. There's no spillover effect, and that's super duper common, and I still see it, and I'm not going to name any names, but I saw it happen this past weekend. Is that people compete on Saturday, and let's say the show gets over, and then they have a crazy big meal Saturday night. They come into Sunday, and they continue their crazy binge eating, and then maybe that spills over into Monday. Maybe by Monday they try to get back on their diet, but they've gained a bunch of weight. They feel like shit, and they're holding a ton of water. And then if they try to go to compete, they have to try to lose all that weight. Some of it's water, some of it could be fat, and it's just a very negative cycle. So although we are hungry and although we did just compete, we have to look at the bigger picture. And when am I competing next? Is binge eating going to help me? The answer is always no. So we do have to suck it up and get some control when we are going post-show as far as our meals go. All right, guys. I did see one more question here. I think, for whatever reason, it's just not coming up. So I'm going to go on my phone and see if I could go back to it. And let's see. I know I'm dwindling here. What is my take on drying out your clients or changing water intake during peak week? All right, so drying out is you're already going to be lean enough, if you're going into peak week. So we're already going to be very dry. We might be depleted, and then what's going to happen is we're going to load the carbs. We're going to carb you up, and that's going to make you look tight. And I'll be honest with you guys, like, I am not necessarily, and this is me personally, like the driest person on stage. I don't have old man, thin skin. Sorry if that may sound a little bit ageist, but older guys have thinner skin. Younger guys just don't have that paper thin skin. It's genetic. It happens as you age. I don't necessarily know the actual mechanism for it. It is what it is. I don't have all the answers all the time. So what happens with me, and I've beat guys who have looked very, very dry backstage. And I'm like, oh man, there's no way I'm going to be able to beat them. They're like super thin skin, very vascular, and then on stage, but they shrunk because their water storage isn't as optimal as mine. Maybe they didn't eat as many carbs as I did. And I tend to look bigger on stage because I am full of water, I'm full of carbs. And at the end of the day, this is bodybuilding, guys, at least if you're competing in the bodybuilding class. And you have to make sure that you are as big and as lean as possible. And dry, and I'll close out the video with this. Dry, the judges are like 15 to 25 feet away from you. They're not going to be able to see the directly under your skin veins that are running all over the place. They're looking at for more of the big picture, and I think a lot of people miss that. So I'm going to actually end the video on that note, is don't pursue the look of looking great really up close, because no one's going to come up close to you and be like, oh man, you look really great, like right here. It's from literally 15 to 30 feet back. That's where you have to look your best. Look big. Get nasty, guys. Hopefully you guys this video helped you navigate show day. And if you have any other questions, as always, guys, I'm available to answer them. If you have any particular or specific questions that I did not cover about show day. As always, guys, I do appreciate everybody tuning in to these videos. We had a great turnout tonight, as always. You have a great rest of your night, and keep crushing it. Peace.